Hello. Hello. Is there a technician who can be of help?
You are live, Neelie.
With all those whiskets, it must be possible to just restore the mute. Hello, Nina. Hello, Alisa. Hello, Isabella. I don't hear. Yes, here we are. Ellen, I got connection. I see the three superstars, so hopefully it will work. Thank you. Do we have connection also with voice? Yeah. Okay. I'm so impressed by what you are doing. So let's take the opportunity in just stimulating other ones. And please tell a little bit about how you are so involved in the startup world. And by the way, you are not anymore startups. You are in the next phase. Nina, would you mind starting?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't mind. Yeah, so my name is Nina Khera. I'm 14 years old and I'm really passionate about human longevity. Recently, about a year ago, I founded a company called Bioteen, and we're working on pretty much extending health span by eradicating different hallmarks of aging and kind of eradicating aging-related diseases as a result. And this summer, I'm interning at GraphWorks, which is a medical devices company, and also I am interning with the Harvard lab, pretty much working on COVID-19 data analysis.
So you could be the angel for COVID-19 to find the vaccine at the end of the day, or help.
Yeah, so actually what we're doing is we're analyzing COVID-19's link to aging. So we're looking at the mortality curve of COVID-19 and how that correlates with aging. And we actually found we have some really interesting data and results we're finding. And yeah, so this is more, to see, hey, can we use aging drugs and different approaches we have for aging right now on COVID-19? And results look really promising.
It sounds great. Just asking Isabella and Alishba to give a little bit of background what you are active in, and then try to connect and try to get a circle of the female whiskets, what you can do for the moment of our world now. Isabella, are you willing to do that?
Yeah, I can give you a little bit of information about myself. So I am 16 and very, very interested and passionate about female healthcare and also building more sustainable food systems. So for about 2 years, first year, I was looking at sustainable food development using what's called cell agriculture. So taking these cells and then growing them into our agriculture instead of using cows or pigs or chickens or anything like that. So it's a very, very fascinating technology that lets us make all our food at a very small scale using smaller organisms that require less resources. And as a result, use less water, they use less land, they don't emit as much greenhouse gas. And I think the food system we have today is so severely broken. And there's just so much change. So I was very, very it was fantastic to be in that industry. The people are wonderful in cell agriculture. And then the second thing that I've really been thinking about and honing in on is female healthcare and just empowering women through health. And the specific problem that I'm working on with the team is tackling maternal mortality. So women that are dying around the age or around the time of childbirth in Africa, which is where most of the maternal deaths around the world are in the developing world. And of that, like 66%, 70% are in Africa. And of all maternal deaths, 20% are in Nigeria. So we're building a project in a state in northwestern Nigeria called Jigawa. And we're distributing a drug called misoprostol, which is a like post-birth hemorrhaging prevention drug, so making sure that women don't bleed after. So we're working with a nonprofit down there and the government to do this whole pilot, which is pretty exciting. And then beyond that, I also work at a startup called the Knowledge Society, TKS. I'm sure we'll get to that the program because all of us have been through it. It's basically a human accelerator program for 13 to 17-year-old students across North America, and now we have a virtual program. So basically, any student that's passionate, excited around the world.
Excellent. Just before going to Alishba, 2 questions to you. Do you need a cow at the beginning, or can you start with an artificial cell and developing it? Do you need 1 cow?
So what's really exciting is theoretically we can take 1 cell from a cow. So what's interesting about these products is it takes a cell from an animal and then you grow that cell outside of the animal into the same muscle tissue. Theoretically, there's a type of cell called an induced pluripotent stem cell. And you can take 1 of those from a cow, and that has the potential to feed the entire world if we do the right cell biology and all that. So you need a cow at the beginning, but no cows are hurt in the process. It's just like 1 sample.
Thank you. My second question, are you also cooperating with flying doctors?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm also cooperating with flying doctors in Africa. I'm an ambassador for flying doctors over there, and they do have an extremely interesting network, and they are taking profit of the digital technology where they can reach now areas in South Africa or in Africa where before that it wasn't possible. So you don't need to be there in person, but you can already teach and educate people over there. Are you cooperating with them, or there are other non-profit organizations?
No, so not at this time. We're not cooperating with them. What we're doing, and it seems like I've never actually heard of them, so it seems like a fantastic organization and mission. We're cooperating with a very local nonprofit in Jigawa, and they've done a couple projects with like World Bank and different universities in the state. So I won't disclose right now because we have to sign all the agreements, but very, very cool nonprofit.
Excellent. I will inform you about this one, and there are, of course,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Alishba, please tell us a bit more about your project.
Yeah, for sure. So for the past 2 years, I've been super interested in machine learning and blockchain. So, and then looking at ways we can kind of use these to solve problems in different industries. So particularly, I've been going really deep into energy as well as healthcare. Initially, I started out in the blockchain space, and I basically identified a problem within like the healthcare infrastructure, especially within supply chain management. And so in the developing world, almost like 40% of their medication can be counterfeit. And one of the main reasons for that is there's literally no way to track where this medication is coming from and how it's being distributed around, different places. And so I wanted to basically figure out a way we could track this medication, allow for more transparency so that people could catch counterfeit within the industry. And so I actually applied blockchain technology to that as a platform that we can use to track that. And so I got a little bit of support from IBM because they're doing a lot of work in this space. So got to kind of develop out the entire infrastructure for a product like this. Stuck around that space for a little bit, built some other interesting dApps more in the real estate space. And now I'm really interested in machine learning. And so I've been looking at ways we can apply this to specifically robotics. And then I'm also looking at a problem within energy storage. So within robotics, I'm basically looking at improving prosthetics. And so I actually knew someone who had a prosthetic arm and realized that they're very expensive. Like at the high end, they can cost up to $100,000. And the actual grip and grasp of the prosthetic arm is often done manually. So user literally has to manually control how they want to lift up different objects, how they want to manipulate it. And so I basically applied my kind of knowledge in deep learning, different like algorithms in AI to basically improve the process of prosthetics and 3D printing. And right now I'm looking at working with Hanson Robotics. You might have heard of their like robot. So they're doing a lot of interesting work in this space. So potentially might be implementing my algorithm into their robots, which is really exciting. And then, yeah, last thing, like I mentioned, is energy storage. So super interested in improving just the research and development process of energy storage systems like batteries. And we're looking at something called supercapacitors as well. So essentially right now we're developing out the product and looking at ways we can accelerate the testing process for different manufacturers in the space.
Alishba, just talking about batteries, what is your approach for it is really an important issue in the chain, but how can we deal with it and with all the challenges that are to be expected? Do you have a thought about that?
Yeah, so batteries specifically, just like energy storage itself is a huge problem because like if we think about renewables themselves, like the prices of renewables are going significantly down, but we're still not widely implementing it. And the reason is because renewables aren't really reliable today. Like the sun is shining at certain parts of the day and it's not shining in the other parts. And so you might think, okay, we have like storage systems and backup systems where we can store energy for when it's not being produced. But we actually don't have enough. So we need way more energy storage capacity. Just for context, like if we want to get our goal of having almost 45% of our power being generated from renewables, we need to almost like 20x our energy storage capacity in the next 10 years. And so that's kind of how I realized this is a huge problem that we need to obviously fix. But the specific problem I'm looking at tackling is within testing. So if you break down the value chain, these manufacturers are doing testing to see like how long their cell will last because you want it to last long. And so they'll go through like research and development, but they're doing this manually in labs. So it's taking like 3 months to a couple of years. And so if we can just use the past data that they've already collected during tests, we can actually significantly speed this process up. So that's kind of how we saw the intersection of being able to speed this process up, leading to kind of more of these energy storage systems being created.
A question for all the three of you in your different disciplines. Are there a lot of ring fence areas in which cooperation is just blocking a further step? Or is it not at stake that it's ring fence, there is a lot of cooperation? Be quite open and honest to that. Nina, please start.
Sure. So are you talking about, there's a lot of incorporating different corporations and businesses in a particular area? Is that sort of?
Yeah,
okay?
So I'm thinking with your research and with your explanation what the research is going to do and how important it is, are you realizing that there are a lot of barriers that because there is not enough cooperation, that we are not combining instead of, and so on?
I'd say in the field of aging and human longevity, one of the main barriers is FDA approval. So, well, not typically for aging-related drugs, but it's just that the FDA doesn't really classify aging as a disease because we don't really know it like that. But seeing the effects it can have on families and people, many people are pushing for it to be classified as a disease. Also, there's public opinion too, right? Because the public has to be okay with your drug and with your approach for you to actually be able to have it reach people. So I think those are two main barriers because definitely aging needs to kind of improve its public opinion. Not that people don't want to stop aging. It's more that people don't necessarily consider that a very urgent matter, but it definitely is in the sense that it does cause other diseases.
Yeah. Isabella, how is it in your discipline and sector?
It's interesting because when I think there's just so many barriers when it comes to just like creating something novel. It's just hard. It's hard to go into the world and be like, I want to change what we are doing today. And I think one of the interesting stuff in food systems is if we look at just dairy alone, it impacts the livelihoods of over 1 billion people.
Well, yeah.
So if we're saying let's create a whole new economy, a whole new product, well, it's okay. R&D is hard. We don't have enough scientists. We don't have enough engineers. There are just not enough people working on this problem. But beyond that, we create a product and all of a sudden it's 1 billion people in one way or another are likely negatively impacted because when we say like their livelihood depends on dairy, and this is just dairy, we're also talking this could replace our meat products, this could replace our leather products, our fragrance products, like anything to do with animals, which is exciting. But then we're like, okay, well, we're literally impacting 1/7 or 1/8 of the world. And that is a whole barrier, because now it's not even just like, how do we make sure these foods are nutritional, these products are safe, but then it's like, how do we transition people into an entirely new world? Like, this is going to be a whole new revolution. And there's like so many exciting, interesting technologies. Alishba was touching on some. Nina, the stuff that she's doing in aging is awesome. And it's like, we want to create new like energy storage and we want to have new drugs, but like this is a new world that we are building. So how do we like involve, first of all, more people? I don't think there's enough people working on these problems, because people are what makes the world go round. Not one person is going to change it all. Like the project I'm working on in Nigeria is only possible because I have just a rock star team that is like doing so good. So those are some of the things that I would say. I think it's like, okay, how do we involve the players that are actually not going to be beneficiaries from these processes, from these things? Like, I'm sure maybe Nina and Alishba can touch on it, but there are companies that benefit from the world not being that great of a place. Like, there are companies that benefit from the fact that we are slaughtering like billions of animals every year for our food. Like, we benefit from it, we get protein from it. So we really got to think about it and transition the world in a sustainable way and involve people, and involvement can create tensions, and it's just hard.
You need more political attention?
I don't know. I don't know. Would that be unproductive is my question. I think there's like, especially around young people or people my age, like this kind of connotation around, I'll talk about anything except politics. I don't want to touch on politics. I don't know if political is the best way to do it.
Yeah, got it. Alishba, please give us your ID.
No, I want to kind of touch on the last point that Isabella was talking about. And I think like it really just comes down to incentives. Like, you'll realize like everybody has different incentives, and really understanding that isn't always easy. And this was like something that, just like as an example, when I was working on like that medication project, like this was a huge thing that I realized, because for me it was like, okay, why would people not want to know where their products are coming from? Like, if we could catch counterfeit, like why would we not want to do it? But reality is like people are profiting on this. Like, it's an industry, people are doing it because they make money. And so that was like a huge realization for me, is like, how do we understand the incentives that people have? And then based on that, like, even when you're working on a project, you almost have to pivot like who your target audience is based on like what kind of incentives they have, or even just like getting people involved. Like, I'm sure like Izzy's working on the Nigeria project, and there it's like, there's so much FDA approval, there's all like government that you just have to get involved. Like, there's no way to do it without having that. And so I think it's like figuring out, okay, what are the incentives? And then if they don't align, how do you, change those so that it better fits the kind of impact that you want to make? And then I'd say the second thing is more around, figuring out what are the different organizations and corporations that need to be involved in this for this to really happen. And that might be the government, that might be like different companies, corporations. But I think really understanding that, it, again, comes down to people and understanding the way people think and the way that they work. So that for me was like a huge realization. It's not always easy to just like create a product and be like, okay, this is going to solve blank amount of people's like problems. It's really about figuring out why they would want that and how do you overcome the barriers.
Is being young, being a female, being inventive and innovative and entrepreneurial, is that a more difficult point in your way of pushing to your goal, or does it help?
Yeah,
Nina?
So I think that it can be both bad and good. Obviously, there are things that I don't know, things that I do need to spend a lot more time learning because I'm younger, and I'm very much willing to spend time learning them. So I don't think it's necessarily difficult, but I also do think it does give me a bit of an advantage, because then I have a different perspective and I can kind of bring that perspective to the work I do. So I think it both helps, and also there are some things that I need to work a bit more for, but that's not necessarily bad, is it?
No, it's pushing. Yeah. Isabella?
Yeah, I think it's interesting if you break down a lot of that stuff. It's like the first one is young and age, and I've never really thought of I've never really been like, oh, I'm not going to do this because I'm 16. I'm just like very audacious, and I think I'm invincible. So it's like I just have a lot of audacity, and I want to try things, and I think that makes me the person who I am. So I've never found age a big limiting factor, but maybe I just haven't been in the environment in which it is, and I just have like so many supportive people, and I'm very, very grateful for like each and every one of my relationships there. Then gender, and like the fact that I'm a female, I actually have not experienced, like if I have experienced any downfall from that, I just like don't let it affect me.
Excellent.
And I think, yeah, I think there is, especially among like younger, like the population that I'm around, there definitely is like, I wouldn't call it discrimination, but there's a difference between being a female and a male in an environment. Like there's a difference between how my male counterparts talk to me versus like their male friends. And it's interesting because there still is a level of like not being taken as seriously, even though like the qualifications are there. And it's kind of disappointing to see that everywhere. And one thing that I really notice is whenever I'm in a big group of people, like boys and girls, and then we have to clean up, I always find that the guys will sit down and it's always the girls cleaning. And like that, it isn't the end of the world. It isn't whatever, but it's like how you train is how you perform. And like we're living in a world where we want gender equality and we want all these opportunities for women, but like the boys that we're raising, like, you know, still it's almost like every time I see that happen, I'm like, are we in like, are we living 200 years ago? Like, what is going on? Why aren't you cleaning up? I think there's like little things like that I notice a lot. But I don't let it get to me. I'm like very audacious. So that's my 2 cents.
Keep it like that. Alishba?
Yeah, I think so. All of us are part of, Izzy touched on this a little bit earlier, but we're all part of this like human accelerator at TKS. And so through that program, like we've all gotten training, not just on like the tech, but also on the mindset. And I think like the mindset aspect of doing this is like so underrated. Like we don't often talk about, you know, mindset training, like how do you just become a better person? But it's so important. And that's something huge that I realized even before going into the program. Like my mindset just wasn't there. Like if I could do the same things without having the right mindsets, I think it would be like 10x harder. And so I do think those barriers still exist. It might not be amongst us because I think like we've gotten the training and we've gotten exposure to it, which is like really, which is awesome for us. But I still think that there's a lot of work to do in terms of just like our schooling system. And I think like the way that we train women, like one thing I've seen is like just generally like a huge like lack of confidence. Like girls will, when they're talking about themselves or talking about the work they're doing, they'll always underplay it. Or like the males will always kind of dominate the conversation. That's still something that I commonly see.
Yes.
And so I think like training on the mindset, and I think a lot of it comes down to just self-confidence. Like how much do you believe in yourself and the work that you're doing is so important. And it's still something that is a huge problem. And it might be, you know, part of our schooling system. It might be the way that you just grew up, like the environment that you live in. So I do think there's a lot of moving factors that kind of play into the way that you are and how confident you feel about your work. But really, I think that's like the missing piece is that like the way you're grown up, the schooling system, and really just having confidence in the work you're doing. Because if you believe in yourself, I think half of the barriers go away because most of them are kind of barriers you put upon yourself. So yeah, I've been super lucky to kind of work on those mindsets over time, but I still think we need to put in more effort in that area.
And what was said by Isabella, speak up and don't accept certain issues, for otherwise you can't expect that it will be changing. So, and you are role models, and I'm not certain if you are happy with that, but you are. So, and in a role model, you can push a lot of your generation and also show that you still can have a lot of fun, but that this is driven by a change of mind, and that we need to take all your talents and your exposures for a better world. For otherwise, we will stick in that line where we are complaining later on.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to add something.
Please.
Yeah, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot recently is the fact that a lot of good judgments and like good decisions and like great ways of thinking about things are often not popular amongst crowds. And I think it comes out like the world we're living in isn't the best world we could have. So by like virtue of saying like, I want to build a better world, or I want to create machine learning products that help us test energy storage faster, I want to find the drugs that will cure aging, like we're taking on a new opinion that is not actually widely accepted. And like most, so we're all teenagers. So most teenagers that we talk to, like, don't think about these things that we really, really enjoy and are passionate about. So I think a part of it is just like, when you do want to be audacious and do things, like you are going to be different. And if you're going to be different, you're going to hold opinions that other people won't agree with necessarily. They won't be like very fond of. They won't be popular. And I think if you want to build a world where we, first of all, have a lot more equality and opportunity for people, like you're going to have to speak up at times where you just don't want to. But that's good. That means you're probably doing something that's like better than the world that we have today, and that is going to be unpopular, but like that is a good sign. And I think that's like a really hard thing to actually think about, because it's difficult to be like one girl in a group of 5 boys and to say something like, you are talking over me and like I don't feel heard. But like that is a step towards the world that like I want to build. And I think like that's where you have to think about it. Like, where do I want the world to go in 10 years? And then how do I just do that right now so that, you know, it can start happening?
Fascinating. You are all 3 teenagers, and normally spoken with the term teenager, you are not thinking of researchers, entrepreneurs. How can we change that image? For it's fascinating what you are doing, what you are telling. And what should be done, and you were already talking about education, and a lot, of course, depends on what is the surrounding, what type of family you are from, and were they pushing, or tell a little bit more about that background, why you are the role model in a teenage group, and fascinating. I'm impressed by all 3 of you. Nina, what is different between the 3 of you and a lot of other ones?
So I think, every teenager has a lot of curiosity and a lot of drive. I know that an analogy I like to use is when you're younger, you always want to do something really really fun, or really something that really fits with your personality. So I wanted to be a CEO of a computer science company. I still kind of do, but it's shifted obviously a lot more towards biology too. And I know people want to be astronauts, pop stars, you name it. And am I cutting out? Or
no, go on. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, but so you want to be something wild and amazing as a kid, and that seems to kind of go down a little bit. It seems to me not be as prevalent as your career choice as when you're an adult. And I think it's really that we need to retain that sense of imagination and inventiveness. And we need to remember that we are still kids, and we can do things to change the world. Age is just a number. We still can change the world. So I think that's sort of a big difference. But I think that any teenager can, if they work really hard and if they put a lot of time into it, I do think that they can conduct their own research and start their own companies and change the world.
Alishba, what is your thought? And how can we just push all the other ones? For it is what you are doing, it's also fun. So it's not an activity in which you say, oh my goodness, I'm bearing the world and I need to, and so on. But it's also challenging and fun. Would you mind telling us a bit?
Yeah, for sure. I think that point about enjoying your work is so important, by the way. Like, I think you'll realize that when you're working on things you don't enjoy, it's so important to find the things you enjoy. Like, there's really no substitute for that. But yeah, I think the 2 things that come to mind are one, I think fueling curiosity. Like, if I just think about the schooling system, I don't think it's built to necessarily fuel your curiosity or figure out what you're really passionate about. It's more of just a filtering mechanism to kind of find the best people that would go on into society and contribute to the workforce. But I think if we really want to find more people that have passion for things they're interested in. I think we need to feel curiosity. Like even when you think about like schools, like when you're writing a test, like it's literally like you're doing an assignment, you'll be given a rubric. It's like, if you want to get this grade, just do this and this. And so you're really just meeting like the bare minimum. You're trying to just get what people are telling you to do versus trying to do exploration. And so I think the first thing we need to change is just like not make it a filtering mechanism. I think our school just needs to be more of a place for people to figure out what they're curious about. Like just give them an assignment to research a topic that they think is interesting and just report on that. And I think we need more of that kind of structure when it comes to schooling. And then I think the second thing is like exposure, because I think that's like where it really starts. Like if I didn't know that machine learning and blockchain existed, like the likelihood of me being here right now, talking to you about it and working on projects in this space is very low. And so I think like getting people the right exposure and showcasing these like different areas, it doesn't even have to be technology. It can really be anything they're interested in, is like also another thing we need to do more of. And it's hard because it's like, especially in technology, not a lot of people are thinking about it and not a lot of people are working on it. So it's less common that people have heard of this. But I think if we have more people talking about areas that aren't as common, like when we think about career fields, we think like doctor, we think engineer, we think lawyer, but there's literally so many other ways where you can still work in those fields, but in like completely different ways. And so I think we need more of that optionality, talking about different areas, getting people the exposure, because I think that's where it starts. Like if you get the exposure, it doesn't mean you have to like the thing. Now you just know it exists and you're much more likely to figure out what you're passionate about. And so for me, I'd say those were the two things that really changed my mindset. I got the curiosity and I was just excited to learn things. And then I got the exposure. Like those two things combined helped me figure out what I really wanted to work on.
Isabella?
Yeah, I think everything that they're saying is great. I think what it comes down to, I actually wouldn't necessarily say that every teenager is curious and every teenager has a drive. I actually don't think that's common at all. And I think part of that is as you like grow up, it sort of gets beaten out of you a little bit. And it's like with curiosity, you're almost like creating a lot of new options. And I think a lot of people want the stability and the security of direction. So what I would actually add is like, it's not only about like making everyone, like, I think people just need direction. I don't think that a lot of people, first of all, know about artificial intelligence or quantum computing or a lot of these things that are literally going to change the world in the next 5 to 10 years. So how are they supposed to start? Like if a kid doesn't even like know of the concept of cell agriculture, how in the world are they going to like start building the skills to like actually contribute meaningfully to that industry? And I think part of that is just the information that we are sharing is outdated. And we're not giving like students, like when I was in school, I was just confused 100% of the time of what I wanted to do. I was like, do I want to go to law school? Do I want to become a teacher? Like, what do I want? And what I find very, very fascinating is the fact that like I've gone through the education system for over a decade and I've learned about atoms. I know how to write an essay. I can name a bunch of historical facts, but like never was there a time where we actually spent like a class or a period or a subject or whatever asking like, what do I want in my life? Like, what do I want to do? What am I passionate about? What problems do I want to solve? Like, it's always about like, here's the past, here's what happened. Never like, what is on the bleeding edge of technology right now and how can you contribute it? And like, how do you want to live your life so it's meaningful? So just to sum up, but I think it's all about like, how do we give people the optionality to learn about these things and contribute to this? Because if you don't know, there's a 0% chance that you're going to use artificial intelligence to build better healthcare infrastructure. 0% chance. If you don't know what AI is, like you're never going to get there. And I think that's where all of us, like the Knowledge Society program, TKS, which is it's in Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver in Canada, New York, Boston, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles in the United States. And then there's a virtual program. I don't know if I can drop a link, but I can give a code for, yeah, great. I'll put it in the private chat. This is my link, and it basically anyone that applies to the program, it's an application, and then if you get accepted, you get into the cohorts in the fall. With this link, it'll be a little bit expedited. So I know a lot of the people watching Campus Party, anyone that's up to first year university can apply. But I know that if you're watching this, you're clearly motivated or driven, or you maybe have a child or someone that is a young person with a lot of these ambitions. And I hope Alishba and Nina would agree that like TCAS was a very, very pivotal part for our journeys and where we got started. And so when I think about what are the answers to the education system, I'm like, I want to give other people the opportunity to the best education that I have ever received. So I will drop that link right over there. And so anyone that uses this has a little bit of a fast code. I don't get any monetary impact from that. I love sharing other people the opportunity to just change their lives. So there's that.
Great. By the way, that is at stake. Sharing and joining is so important, and also between females. For you shouldn't just pull legs off the other one because it is a competitor or a potential competitor. Please join and just be aware that if we are helping each other, we can change the world. And having said that, I'm highly interested. What are you, and of course it is dreaming and it is thinking over borders, what are you planning to do 5 years from now? And 5 years, it is just a split second and we are there. Nina, what are you doing 5 years from now?
So something I'm really interested in is brain aging and neurological aging, and finding a way we can prevent that and or mitigate the effects, because it causes a lot of neurodegenerative diseases like dementia, Parkinson's, different categories of dementia too. And it's really interesting, and I want to figure out a way to prevent it. So I'd probably want to be in a lab researching that in a few years.
Sounds great. By the way, your area will be growing and growing with an aging population nearby all over the world. It's up to you. Isabella, what is your dream 5 years from now? What are you doing?
I really see myself just working on a problem and like making substantial change. I think there's a lot of ways like you want to start small, but I hope in 5 years that I've started small and then gone big.
Sounds great. Alishba.
Yep. I think for me, it's similar to Isabella. Like I'm really interested in just working on like hard problems. So that might be within like just deep tech or just like social problems that I get excited by. So I think being able to go deep into like right now, I'm going really deep into just like hard tech and trying to identify like problems there. I think potentially if I figure something out there, working on something that could have a huge impact, whether that's like people or an organization that I'm helping improve something for. And yeah, that can be kind of in different ways, working for a company that has a really cool mission, or even just like starting my own venture to do that.
What I was thinking for this initiative of the campus people, I'm absolutely a fan and already a long time. And why not give it a try? If there is one person or one organization that you have in mind in just helping you in pushing your projects, who would that be? And also name, if you say it's the Pope, then it's the Pope, but then we can just, and I can't imagine that it will be the Pope, but with all respect for the Pope, but if you are just mentioning someone or an organization where normally spoken you would be too timid or you would be too shy to write a letter, for then we can try to push the campus people to do their utmost that could happen. Nina, who are you thinking of? Dream loud.
You know, I think there have been a lot of people and a lot of organizations that have definitely contributed towards my growth. I do think, you know, Isabella, as you can see, the link is running across the bottom. TKS has been very helpful. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I can't pinpoint a single one. You know, I think everyone who's played a role in my life has definitely helped me a lot. I do think my parents have always been supporting me. They're not an organization, of course, but my parents have continuously been supporting me and been very kind with helping me with my research and helping me dream big. So I think definitely if I were to shout out one person, one group of people, I guess it would be my family, my parents.
That sounds great. What I was thinking, I could imagine that it would be the #1 of the World Health Organization, or so. And talking about Isabella, talking about someone of or IMF, or so. The number, but then always the #1, so that there is a meeting with someone. And Alishba, I can imagine that it will be the USO #1, or from the energy organizations. So please, Isabella, who are you thinking of that could be anyhow fascinating discussion? Or perhaps the president of the European Commission, or
yeah. I think so. It depends on what like project we're talking about. If we're talking about my maternal health project, I think that comes down to like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, or the United Nations Population Fund. We have been trying to get a little bit connected, but totally like it's so fantastic. I have some really great mentors on the project helping it go along. But from a food perspective, I think a big player, and like big players that need to be involved, are just, well, #1, like any sort of like European Commission. Like I know Europe is probably going to be one of the faster markets that take in these products, FDA, that type of thing. But then also like meat companies. How do we get the companies that are not going to be beneficiaries from this change? And like, how do we figure out an action plan to get that? That's a fantastic resource there. I think the other one I would say to advance the food industry would be like very big medical biological research faculties, because they have students that are trained in biology. But the thing I found really interesting about food systems is it's not a medical problem. It came from the medical industry. So here's the issue. With food, the incentive is like, let's make it as cheap as possible. With medicine, it's like, let's just make something that saves lives. It doesn't matter if you make a heart that's $10 million or 10 hearts for $1 million. The incentive is still the same. It's just like how many people have access to it. So I would actually argue within medicine, like there's not that much, like it's obviously part of it. People have to afford it for it to whatever, but like there are rich people that can afford a $10 million heart. Like that's just the reality. And so there's less incentive to scale it down. Whereas in food, we need it to be as cheap as possible, because like food is like, to even penetrate this market, you have to have it taste good and then also economically be sustainable. So then what I find really interesting is the fact that the food cell agriculture space evolved from medicine. So the incentives are like incorrect, kind of. It's like we're working on the problem from like a way that doesn't actually make a lot of sense. However, we still need scientists and we still need people. Most companies are in R&D. So I think just getting people from the medical space, and there might be people that love biology but maybe don't want to do medicine for their whole life. Like they can contribute to a very different problem, and I don't think a lot of people know about it. So I would say like medical faculties and any way to get engaged with students. I'm actually a board advisor at a cultured meat company called Aleph Farms. They do cultured steak, and they are a fantastic company out of Israel. And so we've been doing a bunch of initiatives to get involved there. So those are the two different ones. So to recap, like medical faculties where there's a lot of scientists and students. And then for the maternal health, like the UNFPA, Bill and Melinda Gates. I know I just talked a lot. I'm going to pass it over to Alishba now.
Great, thank you. Alishba.
Yeah, for me, I think like it does depend on like the problem that you're looking at. I think for energy storage, a lot of the problem is just like we literally just need more people working on the problem. Like lots of people like Bill Gates, Elon Musk are talking about this problem. Obviously, Elon Musk is actually doing a lot of stuff with Tesla in this space. So I think we do need more people that are like working in this space, but I think particularly we need more people that are looking at different energy storage systems. So if you commonly look at like what most people are innovating in today, it's really just batteries. Like there's two types of batteries, solid state and lithium ion. Those are kind of the most common areas where a lot of research institutions, like engineers are contributing their efforts to. But I think there's still a lot of other interesting areas. Like to name a few, I think like hydro pump, if you can revamp it to be like gravitational energy storage, is a very interesting area. Obviously supercapacitors, that's an area I'm working in. I think we need more people working in that space. So the first thing I'd say is just, getting the people that are already focused on this space, but looking at other energy storage systems. And then I still think we need more engineers, more of these research groups at like MIT and like other universities that are in the space, like looking at these other areas and ways we can progress forward. So I think if we have more people doing that, but also focusing efforts on not just research, but also how do we commercialize these? That's another huge portion of it. I think we can make a lot more impact in this space. And then in terms of like other areas, I think for kind of robotics and the stuff I'm doing there, there's lots of interesting companies like OpenAI, DeepMind's doing some really interesting stuff here. So I think the approaches they have are really awesome. They're focusing a lot on research, but I still think we need people focusing on how do we actually make this something sustainable in real life today. So looking at ways that we can actually commercialize this and apply it to the real world. So I'd say those are kind of the two things.
Thank you so much. Our hour is nearby over. And for me, it was fascinating to not only knowing that you are doing an extremely good job, but that you are also so inspirational in your career way in changing the world. And we need people like you, and I wish you a lot of success. And perhaps the campus people can just, and you and me, we can connect and try to find even more pushing and even more help for you in the very near future. Thank you so much, and have a good weekend and a lot of success.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and all of
Thank you. Bye.